Now that we're officially done with the Paradox Rift format, I wanted to take a look at some of my top prospects for the Temporal Forces format. I will not be attending EUIC, but I am attending Orlando Regionals shortly after EUIC. So I am testing a lot for both events because I have a lot of coaching students going to EUIC, and then I also want to be prepared for Orlando prior to EUIC happening. So today we're going to look at some of my top decks for this format. And I will say disclaimer, I think Snorlax stall is pretty good, and I actually think Pidgeot control has the potential to be even better. But my lists for the stall and control decks have been changing so much as I test more and find out more things about the format that I didn't want to share one of those in a video yet, because there's a good chance that by the time you see the video, I already have new opinions on the control lists. So we'll be looking at the decks on the screen here using the Limitless Deck Builder today, and we'll start with Charizard Pidgeot. So Charizard Pidgeot is pretty much the deck of this format that you want to look for a reason not to play. Like, it's very, very strong, aggressive, and consistent. So the question that comes up when I'm looking at Charizard Pidgeot, and mostly when I'm looking at all the decks that I have listed here that we're going to look at today, is why not play this deck if it's so strong? So the one weakness for Charizard EX, or I guess the main weakness for Charizard EX, Pidgeot EX, is stall and control style archetypes. So for the moment, I have a couple of inclusions in here and a couple more potential inclusions to combat those stall, control, mill style archetypes. Starting with playing the double Charmeleon. So this Charmeleon with Flare Veil is really good because it prevents effects of attacks. So it protects itself from Lost Mine, and it protects itself from Technical Machine De-Evolution. So that makes this Charmeleon good. The problem with it is that Combustion only does 50, and against stall and control, one of their main tactics against us is going to be using this Mimikyu with Safeguard. Prevent all damage done to this Pokemon by attacks from your opponent's Pokemon EX and Pokemon V. So you can't attack this Mimikyu with Charizard or Pidgeot. And so we have the Charmeleon that does 70 damage with Heat Tackle as well. Now, you could consider pairing this with a Lost City in the deck, because you can use Heat Tackle to knock out Mimikyu and send it to the Lost Zone, and then if the opponent is only playing one Mimikyu, then it's just gone for the rest of the game. I haven't gone as far as to put the Lost City in just yet, but I do have this second Charmeleon, and that's not the only thing it's good against. It can just generally be good when you want to do 70 damage, either to set up a knockout for later on, or you want to knock out a single prizer with a single prizer, or you just need to clean up a knockout that your Charizard EX didn't quite finish, but you don't want to send out another Charizard EX to do it. So having this Charmeleon isn't just there for control. It's going to come up and help you, just set up more evolutions over the course of the game, have an extra single prize attacker over the course of the game as well. And like I said, there's definitely potential to pair this with Lost City to get rid of those Mimikyus for good. The other tactic here that I have against stall is the Professor Toro's scenario. Put one of your Pokemon in play into your hand and discard all cards attached to that Pokemon. So again, this is not only going to help us against control and stall. It will help us take a Pokemon out of the active spot that's gotten stuck there with either Mawile or Snorlax. But in other matchups, it can just pick up a Rotom V or a Lumineon V that we don't want on the board. It can pick up a damaged Charizard and send out a healthy one. So it is usable elsewhere, and also these one-of tech supporters are typically very good in Charizard because you can just search them out at an instant with Pidgeot EX's quick search. I did consider cutting the fourth Iono for a Palpad. However, Palpad doesn't feel that great against stall and control. So like if I'm using that Palpad just to get an extra use out of Professor Toro's, it doesn't feel that great because you can just lose the Palpad via Misfortune Sisters or via Eri. So instead I'm going for that fourth Iono. I've considered making it a fourth Boss's Orders, because Boss's Orders is just one of the best cards in the game, but it will also help you against stall and control archetypes to have a fourth gust effect that they're not expecting, right? other decks know that you have the double counter catcher and the 3 boss, and that you'll be able to use most of them throughout the course of a game. But against stall and control, you can't use the counter catchers because they're not going ahead on prizes, which means that you're stuck with just the 3 bosses orders. So I was thinking that potentially a 4th boss's orders could go into the deck, but I think it would be overkill against most matchups. Another consideration is a Switch, but I don't think you want to play Switch and Professor Toros, and Switch falls into the same category of Pal Pad, as in, well, if I'm playing this for the stall and control styled matchups, I could just lose this Switch to an Eri or to a Misfortune Sisters, the same way you could with a Pal Pad. So I think before I put a Switch into this deck, and possibly before I put a Pal Pad or an extra supporter into the deck, I might put a Jet Energy, or even consider replacing the Mist Energy with Jet Energy, just because the existence of Mist Energy seems like it's making TMD Evolution a lot less popular. I'm also seeing that Lost Zone decks are typically only playing like the one Sableye, sometimes only one Psychic, most of the time two Psychic. Of course, the Mist Energy also protects against Star Requiem, against Frenzied Gouging, but in such a varied open meta game that we're going into with the post rotation and with the new set, it's hard to tell, exactly how important is it to have protection against Giratina V-Star. I think it makes sense to have the Mist Energy once you take into account all of the factors. But Giratina V-Star itself, I don't think is going to be too popular. So, like, if we're not that worried about TMD Evolution because we have Double Charmeleon, if we're not too worried about Sableye because it's being played in lower counts, maybe we even play a Lost City for multiple reasons, and one of them is to get rid of the one Sableye so we don't have to worry about that. I could see the Mist Energy becoming a Jet Energy if you're really valuing the stall control style matchups. I'm also going here with the 4th Nest Ball instead of a 4th Buddy Buddy Poffin, because I really value getting that Rotom V down turn 1. I guess you could even consider making this Nest Ball a Hisuian Heavy Ball, just because sometimes you need that Rotom V, or you need the Manaphy versus a Greninja deck. So I could definitely see the 4th Nest Ball becoming a Hisuian Heavy Ball, because you can Arvin, search your deck, see that Rotom's prized, and then instead of getting Nest Ball, you just get Hisuian Heavy Ball. So that's another consideration for the deck list. For my offensive tool, I have Vitality Band because I think it covers the most ground in combination with Maximum Belt. Maximum Belt's obviously just the best damage modifier. I don't like Defiance Band just because it forces you to have to be behind on prizes, and a lot of times Charizard Pidgeot is going aggressive. And I also don't like Choice Belt because Choice Belt doesn't help you against things like Chien Pao, or against things like Miraidon EX, whereas like if the opponent takes one prize card and you're doing 210, the Vitality Band brings it up to 220, and then you can knock out Pokemon with 220 HP, regardless if they're a V or an EX or whatever. So that's my current Charizard EX Pidgeot EX deck list, subject to change with the cards that I mentioned in my considerations. Next, let's look at Lugia, and this one is not going to be as long as the Charizard analysis. This is pretty much just the Champions League list. I've switched a couple of counts, so I have 2 V-Guard. I think 2 V-Guard would be really good if we get into a meta game where like Arctina is 5 to 8%, Lost Tina is 5 to 8%. The V-Guard energy is just incredible versus Tina V-Star. And I think Tina V-Star is still strong. I'm just not sure how popular it's going to be, like I mentioned, because people seem to think Lost Tina fell off a lot. I definitely think it went from like BDIF contention to just being a very good deck. I don't think it covers as much ground as it did when Path to the Peak was in the deck, but I still think Tina V-Star is strong. So I have the 2 V-Guard, 2 Mist Energy. That could easily change if needed, or maybe even drop down to 16 energy cards. I believe this is currently at 17. Yeah, 17 energy cards currently. I'm still playing the 2 Snorlax, 3/3 Chinchino. I do want a 4th Minchino, but I don't really want to cut the 2nd Snorlax for it because I think Lost Zone Box is incredibly strong, and Snorlax is your main attacker in that matchup. So that's why I've kept the 2nd Snorlax still. Other than that, yeah, this is a really good list, really, really solid. Lugia is just a very, very strong deck. It doesn't have the consistency and like searchable aggression like Charizard EX Pidgeot does, but it does have Chinchino, and Chinchino is like the strongest single prize deck around. I'm just going to click replace Japanese prints real quick, and now we can look at the English Chinchino. The Chinchino with special roll does 70 damage for each special energy card attached to this Pokemon. So this thing's just incredible. This is why Lugia is one of the best decks right now, because you have the best single prize attacker in the game, and against Lost Zone Box, you have a single prize attacker that pretty much just trumps the Lost Zone Box attackers. So yeah, really strong deck, really high damage output with Chinchino. As we all know, the issue is, do you get the turn 2 double Archeops? But you also don't necessarily need turn 2 double Archeops all the time, because your Chinchino can attack for 140 on turn 2, and your Snorlax can attack for 160 with a DTE on turn 2. Or you could just like read the wind, and a lot of times in certain matchups you won't even be like punished that hard for it. So yeah, turn 2 Archeops is still the goal, but obviously we have attackers that can do things on turn 2 without the Archeops. So you could also consider cutting the 4th Lugia V for a 4th Minccino if you wanted. This is definitely the Minccino to play, because it has Call for Family. Search for 2 basic Pokemon, put them on your bench. So that's Lugia. Let's go over to Lost Zone Box. So I have 2 lists here for Lost Zone Box. Let's start with this one. This is Lost Zone Box that includes Raikou V plus Forest Seal Stone. I have a couple neat inclusions in here. So we've got the Temple of Sinnoh to turn off Mist Energy. So if we want to attack with Frenzied Gouging, or we want to attack with Lost Mine, the Temple of Sinnoh is going to turn off the opponent's Mist Energy to do that. Another card I actually considered that's does kind of 2 things at once is Giovanni's Charisma. Because Giovanni's Charisma can return the opposing Mist Energy to their hand, and it also allows you to accelerate an energy, which is an effect we're missing from Supporter now that Raihan rotated. So Raihan used to be popular in Lost Zone Box decks, so I've considered this Giovanni's Charisma, but I don't think this deck list is the place for it, especially since we're not playing Pokegear. And if I was to add more supporters, I think the first one would be a second Roxanne. So Giovanni's Charisma, just an idea at the moment. It's not exactly making the cut for me right now. Another card I should definitely mention here is the Hoopa EX. This is good against Arceus VSTAR. It's good against Iron Hands. It's also going to be good against Great Tusk Mill. If they accelerate too many energy to the board, your Hoopa EX can just start wiping through them while they're trying to mill you, and you just get one-hit KOs this way. The energy lineup, the 4th Darkest Energy, I like because we have Roaring Moon that needs 2 darks, and we have Hoopa that needs 2 darks. You're really never going to use Bandit's Fist, so just 2 darks for Hoopa. Waters, we have 3 because Radiant Greninja needs 2. Psychic, we have 2 because of Sableye, but I could see cutting down to 1 Psychic, or maybe even removing the Sableye Psychic package entirely if you wanted to add more consistency, if there's other attackers you're interested in. And then just the 2 Lightning, because we don't really need to use Arm Press. If we ever need to do a large amount of damage with a Lightning attacker, we could just use Raikou's Lightning Rondo. Iron Hands is really here for amp you very much, but you could potentially use Arm Press in a pinch if you really needed to. And then we have double Cramorant, just so we can make sure we're getting that early damage in. I want to be attacking and putting damage out almost every turn if possible. And just having that extra consistency and reliability to make sure you're getting that 110 damage in on turn 1. That could be a prize card. That could be a setup on a 2 prize Pokemon. You want to make sure that you're putting out that damage as soon as possible and chaining attacks every single turn. But also I have the Crisis Punch in here that does 280 if your opponent has 1 prize card remaining, and when attached to a Cramorant, it's actually free because of lost provisions. So I want to make sure that if I ever have to Lost Zone a Cramorant off of a Chorus or a Flower Select based on my other options, that I'm able to keep another Cramorant around for the game. Maybe also, you know, Suian Heavy Ball, maybe Cramorant's in there, but also Radiant Greninja's in there. You might need to choose Radiant Greninja in the early game, so I just feel safer having 2 Cramorants when I'm playing the Crisis Punch. And yeah, that's kind of all I have to say for this deck list. This deck list feels very good. The things that it misses sometimes are the Pokegear or the extra supporter cards, but it's very adaptable to what you're playing against. It covers a lot of ground, and I like the double Cramorant because even if you're not doing a lot of things every turn. Like maybe you whiff the second Colress, you still have double Cramorant, so you can be putting that pressure on with the 110, setting up things, taking a prize card here and there, and then you still have your Cramorants around for later in the game with Crisis Punch. And then this is my other Lost Zone deck list. It's not too different. I'm playing the double Pokestop in here. And with the double Pokestop comes a couple of other things. So I've cut down on the Pokemon line drastically. We're down to just one Cramorant, and we're down to Moon and Iron Hands, no Raikou, and no Hoopa EX. So we're definitely a lot lighter on Pokemon options, but still playing the 4 Super Rods. So we can pretty reasonably recycle whatever Pokemon it is that we want to use. For the cards that came out, they came out to make room for things like the double Pokestop, the 2 Pokegear, an extra Roxanne and a boss's orders, a Pal Pad for the supporter card since I am playing Pokestop, so we can get those back. The Pal Pad might be extra. You might be able to cut the Pal Pad. We're still playing Prime Catcher plus Counter Catcher. Let me replace the Japanese printed cards there real quick. Prime Catcher. Um, and then I'm playing Canceling Cologne in this list. So this list definitely has powerful options that the other one didn't. It also has extra consistency. It has that Canceling Cologne play that's going to be easier to do because of the Pokestop, because of the Pokegear, finding you supporter cards that are going to dig through your deck more, or even finding a boss's orders to pair with the Canceling Cologne if you can't find Prime Catcher or you're not behind to use Counter Catcher. And then finally, we have Chien Pao, which Chien Pao is the only the only deck out of these decks that we're looking at today. This is the only one that I haven't actually tested with myself. Not much changes for the deck, so it's not like you really need to relearn the deck just because of rotation. We gain Prime Catcher, which is really powerful. We gain Cypher Maniac's Code Breaking, which is extremely powerful. Cypher Maniac's Code Breaking, search your deck for 2 cards, shuffle your deck, put those cards on top of the deck, and then you draw into those with concealed cards or with Bibarel, or if they're item cards, you can even just get them with Pokestop. So yeah, Chien Pao, this deck gets a little bit of an upgrade because Prime Catcher Cologne is easier than double cross switcher Cologne, and because you can Cypher Maniac those 2 aforementioned cards to the top, draw into them, and then use them for your Cologne, Moonlight Shuriken, knockout double Charmander, knockout double whatever you want to, and get through that Manaphy effect. So yeah, Chien Pao is very strong. I have 3/3 Bibarel because setting up your Bibarel is like how this deck functions. Even though Baxcalibur is definitely necessary, you also need your Bibarel so you're drawing into cards, because Baxcalibur isn't any good without water energies to attach. So that is my Chien Pao deck list, and those are my top deck lists right now. Like I said, I do think Control is very strong. I just don't have a list that I'm comfortable sharing for it yet. Hope you guys enjoyed it. If you have any questions about the lists I shared today, be sure to leave it down below, and I'll get back to you in the comments. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time here on Celio's Network.